Hello and welcome to What's With Healthcare podcast today. We are three nurses who have a combined 90-year history of working and observing healthcare in action. We come together for every podcast and talk about a topic related to the healthcare system from our different perspectives we've had from working and experiencing it. We're here to share this knowledge and our perspectives, and we want to hear from everyone out there who's listening in. We want you to help us to learn more and grow more and talk and share. That's why we're coming to you every week. We acknowledge and pay respects to the lands and the waterways of the traditional Aboriginal families from where we're podcasting from. So those lands are the Yugara, Turrbal and Darumbal peoples, and always was and always will be Aboriginal lands.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode 10. So we've hit double digits today for the podcast. Woohoo! Bit of a celebration there. Welcome Sue and Isabel.
Hi.
Hey guys. So today we're going to be talking about discrimination, and particularly, I guess, in the workplace. Now, this one was specially requested by one of our listeners, so we thought, well, we'll pop it in here today in reverence to that. So it's important in healthcare, and we're going to share some of the experiences that we've seen and had. And then look at some ways to, how we can do it better. How can we be more open to noticing how we may inadvertently, which is usually the case, discriminate against other cultures and groups that are not maybe the same as us. So we'll kick off with our definition. What is discrimination? Discrimination happens when a person or a group of people is treated less favourably than another person or group because of their background or certain personal characteristics. It is also discrimination when unreasonable rule or policy applies to everyone, but has the effect of disadvantaging some people because of a personal characteristic they share. Now, over to you, Isabel.
Thank you, Celeste. Well, I'm going to talk about the types of discrimination, just mentioning them. And let's start with age. And also, some people that have some kind of disability. Also, people are discriminated because of their race, including the color of their skin, national or ethnic origin, or immigrant status. That's another one. Some people are also discriminated because of sex, pregnancy, marital or relationship status, family responsibilities, or even, breastfeeding. And lately, it's been very common, I think that we've been talking about recently, everywhere, is sexual orientation, gender identity, or intersex status.
Good morning, everyone. And it is a really important topic because it is everybody's responsibility, discrimination. And I think sometimes because, we're living our lives and we surround ourselves with people who all look the same as us, think the same as us and feel the same way, I think we have a habit of doing that. And then inevitably we don't get to understand how people are discriminated against. And it's really serious because in a work environment, for instance, if someone is discriminated against, they don't feel part of the team. They feel like they're on the outer, and it's really hard to be part of the dominant group. If you're working I'm thinking of a ward, for instance, and you've got that ward environment, and most of the staff are white healthcare workers, and possibly you're not from that sort of dominant group, and so when they sit around and have their conversations, they might inadvertently have some discriminatory sort of thoughts and opinions that kind of really holds you back, because they might be talking about a specific religion. They might be talking about something that just puts you on the outer, that feels that you can't be part of it. And and that would be an awful way to feel. Nobody likes to feel like they're on the outer. So and our employers really they have a responsibility. We have responsibilities, you're mandatory ed every year. You've really got to do that stuff and really learn from it and understand what it's trying to get you to unlearn, I think is important in there. I mean, thinking about all the mandatory education, ladies, that we have to do, I'm thinking the ones like the equal employee opportunity ones that we have to do every year. What else? There's the Aboriginal and Torres Strait, working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander persons and peoples. That's another one we have to do annually. There's other ones about working with diversity culture that we have to do annually. What else is there? There's quite a few that are really important for us to understand what's the messaging that we're trying to integrate and remind ourselves of. Can you think of other ones?
Not off the top of my head, Sue. I think that you've covered the main ones.
Yeah, but I think it's really important because at the end of the day, if a team member feels left out because of, they actually might have a particular religion, they might have English as second language. What else is there that I'm just thinking of the really common things? They might be male in a female dominated profession, because healthcare is very female dominated these days. I think we can all agree on that, can't we?
Mm.
And if you're a male working in that space, do you sometimes feel discriminated against?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It is reversed, I know, but it's very possible. What else is there? I mean, I know particular stories where people from who, are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, who identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, have not identified in the work group because they have worked in a ward and they have been part of conversations where the dominant group has been speaking less than, have been quite racist towards Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So they don't feel they can safely identify. And so that's, how hard would that be? I think.
Because it's tying in with psychological safety in a group. A team can't work well if it's not safe to be your authentic self and know that that's accepted.
Yeah, and I think that's where we have to just watch our assumptions, and I think that English as a second language is really important as well. I don't know how many times I have seen people eye roll, like when they've got, a staff member who's come in, maybe an agency staff member who's, got English as second language, and they've gone, oh, great, we've got another agency staff member from another country. Great, this is going to be a good shift. And you're like, well, this person has just walked in. We don't know their technical proficiency. You have just made a massive assumption, and that's discrimination. So don't be an ass. Try and be a decent human for a moment. Could you try that? But, people will say, oh, well, in my experience, this is how it is. Yeah, it doesn't give you the justification to be an ass. I don't know. That's my thinking. No. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, from my experience, because I work, I spent, the last 10 years working at the university and mainly doing research. So from my experience, what I've noticed, I know personally 3 people who are doing nursing research, but they were discriminated before because they had a different background. So they were scientists and they were doing research in the School of Nursing. I've been in different universities. And because they weren't a nurse, they felt like they had to study nursing. They actually did study the degree after, but they already had a qualification. They already had a PhD, and then they did the nursing just to tick the box. So people didn't comment or didn't value whatever input they were doing just because they were a nurse.
Yeah.
No. Personally, I don't think they needed to do the degree because you can contribute from research from different angles, from different perspectives. But yeah, so
I agree, Sue. Isabel, because you can be an expert in your particular little area. So and that should be valued. So I've seen an instance where we had a neonatal intensive care nurse who was so highly qualified. She'd worked in a really big NICU and came out to a regional area where the norm was that everyone was a midwife, and that was because of ease of rostering. I think that's sort of how that evolved, that if you're a midwife then you can work all the areas. You can do labour ward, you can do the ward, and you can do the nursery. But this nurse we discovered, like after she'd been in the town for like 6 months, had actually been working in one of the nursing homes because she didn't feel welcomed, you know. And when she was actually taken around to the maternity unit, she was introduced as, you know, a hotshot NICU nurse, and that didn't go down very well. People were intimidated, and it's unfortunate that she wasn't held up as like, oh great, we've got someone that's really fresh and knows this stuff and can teach us all, and value that, and then she in turn teach her the bits that she might not know that would help her to work on the ward. So yeah, we can cut our own nose off to spite our faces, because we need each other. We need to work together, and you know, let's face it, there's not a lot of us nurses around these days, so we should pull together like that.
Exactly. And you know, and find out, like, it's so interesting when you have got people from other cultures and other perspectives, because it helps us understand their experience. So, you know, and I think if we can understand, you know, other people's experience, then it just adds to our work with our patients, and it helps our patients feel safer, because our patients come from a diverse pool of people. So we need to be able to represent that diverse pool of people as well when we're caring, because that creates psychological safety for our patients as well. So I don't know, I think, and making sure that it's all of our responsibilities. It's just not because, you know, employers can be held liable. So if I've got a particular staff member who is day after day discriminating against everyone, that multiple complaints come in from other people, you know, that's as an employer, I have vicarious liability. So I can actually, as an employer, be sued because this staff member won't curb their discrimination behaviours. So, you know, you can performance manage those really, you know, you can performance manage the racists, if you like, because you have a right as an employer to protect your other staff and your team and your patients. So I think that's a really important message to, you know, so because I've heard it, oh, you know, don't worry about Jackie. She's just like that. She just, you know, she doesn't get it. No, Jackie's got to stop it. Jackie's got to pull her, you know, she's got to be brought to account to say she can't speak about people's skin color whenever Jackie feels like it. You know, she has to fit into this team and work together with this team. So I think that's an important note, that, you know, we're all in it together and we all have to work together. And I guess that starts, you know, where I might like to really bring it to is understanding our privilege. So, you know, and this is a tough one because people don't like looking at their privilege, because I guess, you know, I don't know, it gets bandied around on social media a bit, you know, oh, you got your white privilege, and people get, you know, people kind of get a bit offended by that, because they're in the social media stream. Sometimes you've got to have shame for having white privilege, but it's not that. It's about just understanding that because I come from a place where I have had, you know, that capability to be white, educated, you know, that I have been able to educate myself, work really hard, all those sorts of things. It doesn't mean I haven't worked hard. It doesn't mean that I haven't had some, you know, really hard times. It doesn't mean that I haven't done that. What it means is, if I have white privilege, it's that I haven't had to worry about going into a shop and being, you know, profiled as someone who's going to potentially steal something because of the color of my skin. It means that, you know, I'm not going to be told I can't do something because I have English as second language. It means, so it just means that some things I don't have to really work quite as hard as someone else who comes from a diverse background. Does that make sense, girls? Like, or should I try and say it another way? What do you think?
I agree, Sue. I think you're covering it. We just don't realise, because we've had the doors tend to open automatically when you're from a majority group, that we just go through them and we still work hard and stuff, but we just haven't had the same experience, and the lens that we look at the world through is different. Yeah, so we need to acknowledge that and not assume that everyone looks through the same lens as we do.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think because people get a bit confused too about how to measure their privilege. And so I know that we're going to put a slide up in this podcast today for people who are watching it. And it's a great wheel that came from the Canadian Council of Refugees. And basically it's an anti-oppression power wheel. So it's the thing that allows people to potentially see their privilege a little bit more obviously. So it sits with, and when we share this wheel, it's about looking at this wheel and going, well, if I am male, my privilege is higher. If I'm able-bodied and my ability as an able-bodied person is fully capable, then I have privilege. If I am white, I am privileged. If I am middle-aged, I'm more privileged than a young person or an older person, which is interesting, I find. If I have seniority in my organisation and I'm a senior staff member or an executive person, I have privilege over someone who has no professional affiliations. So you know, maybe you've been working in a supermarket your whole life, for instance. So your privilege is less. If I am an old timer in my organisation, so I have been there for more than 5 years, so therefore, once again, I have more privilege because I'm known to the organisation and I've been there for longer. And sometimes the longer I'm in an organisation, I have even more privilege. So sometimes you've got the untouchables, and I've heard them called exactly that. So they're called the untouchables. So they've been in the organisation for more than 20 years and nobody wants to say a word to them because they've got this untouchable sort of quality to them. Am I English speaking? Then that sits me in privilege over people from other languages. Am I non-Indigenous to that country? Then I'm more privileged. And if I have degree certification and I'm a citizen of that country, then I have more privilege as well. So you can see from this wheel and from the slide that we'll put up that you can see that there are the things that hold us in that position. And it's not about, you know, that being different for us or anything. It just means that, you know, and we shouldn't feel shame or bad for being white. We shouldn't. We should just understand that it gives us different opportunities that are greater than others. And just on one word on that point as well, just to point out male privilege, because a lot of men are, you know, I've seen a lot of forums where men are a bit tired of that male privilege status. And I get it. Like, it's not that men should feel shame about that. It just goes back to that idea that, you know, men do not have to worry about being called a bitch for speaking their minds. You know, at night, men don't have to walk with a key sticking out between their fingers, ready to gouge out an attacker's eyes as they move through a parking lot or go back to their car at the end of a shift. And they don't have to worry about getting, you know, cat calls, getting whistled at, or, you know, or being, you know, it brought to their attention they're good looking or not good looking, or getting unwanted advances when they're just walking down the street going about their business. So that's what it is. Men don't have to have those things happening to them because, you know, that's just that position, that power position that comes with being a man. And that's what it's all about. So it's not to have shame. It's not to, you know, say, well, you know, you haven't worked hard. It's just about knowing that that's the privilege that I have. And, you know, and yeah, and as that privilege, sometimes we can hold it and we can fight racism and, you know, and understand how racism works from that power position as well. So it's not easy to swallow, but, you know, we can't achieve equity without addressing the inequity. So that's all this is about, I think. I've talked too much though, so I want to hand over to the ladies to just go, you know, if we think about this privilege, what can we do? Yeah, what can we do?
Yeah, Sue, I'm thinking it's carrying that awareness, isn't it? Like it's all about awareness and knowing what we have and how can we use this awareness and this privilege to open doors to step back and allow others who we know have great skills or have something to say, to share, to step back and let them speak or and say like, oh, look, I think so-and-so's got a really good idea. Like in a meeting, it might be that people will naturally look to people that are the majority for an opinion. And when you know that you might feel the same way or differently or whatever, but it's just giving that voice, stepping back and letting others speak so that they do sort of get seen.
Mm. And I think also asking the question of, have we considered all options here? Have we considered all the perspectives, or are we just a room full of white people with our white ideas and our white perspectives, and we've just gone with what's easy?
Yes.
We're all able-bodied. We're all probably married and got kids at home to, we're sort of all just doing the same thing. So we all have the same thinking, and have we thought of everybody?
Yeah. We're busy thinking about getting on to the next thing. So let's just wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, there's actually great links to where you can see this. And sometimes in schools, they use this really good running race where they actually, to teach kids about this inequity, they actually, I know, and it might sound harsh, but it's what some schools are doing. They actually make the kids run a race. So they do a 100-meter sprint. And so they put all the white kids at the front of the line. They put all the kids of colour further back. They put all the kids of colour who have English as second language back another line. They put all the kids, and then they just hit the starter's gun and go, okay, run.
Mm-hmm.
So the kids at the front go over the line first. So yeah, it's just that sort of idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that you still don't have, I mean, I can have white skin, but still come from a lower socioeconomic group with no education preferences, which reduces my privilege. So, and we know that, white people, white people in prison don't have, they're lower socioeconomic groups who don't have the privilege of education. So we can still have that 100%, but we're talking about just the general populace. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to, I don't know, in the future, maybe we can talk about this again, but, it'll be interesting to know about the stats, because to see whether there is much research. I know we talk about this and, in social media, you can hear a lot, but, for me, numbers really matter. And I like to see, stats and see, is it, how significant this really is.
Well, it's so significant in our healthcare system, Isabel, that we have whole groups and whole cultural groups who won't come to hospital because they don't feel safe. Because the barrier to the healthcare service is the fact that it's got it's seen as discriminatory against people who, are from another culture, and they don't feel that they're listened to or supported to live their life. They come into the hospital, they're told how to be, they're told what they need to do. And because it's not in their culture to follow that direction, and, they're not being listened to about how their culture works, they're just walking away, taking whatever they're given and not following any of it, because it's just not, their culture's not being considered. The way they live their lives is not being considered. So that's a barrier to healthcare, and then therefore healthcare is not for all then, is it? And so that makes me sad when I hear stuff like that, because I'm like, well, healthcare is for all, but if there is a group of people out there who see healthcare as a barrier, then oh my gosh, we're not quite right there.
Just to share an experience and a learning experience of my own in the last 10 years, and that's becoming familiar with the interpreter services that are available and often over the phone. So it was particularly in regional areas, this has been such a great service because prior to that, and even when it was available, but I myself wasn't familiar with it or comfortable with it. And, you know, you've got the pressures of working in an ED in a regional area where you're the one nurse and you might have another person coming to help, but you're doing triage and everything, and you're sort of trying to get things happening and look after everybody and sort of be in three places at once. And often, you know, our non-English speaking clients will come in with one of their kids. They'll wait till the kids have finished school or till their husband's finished work to come in and interpret for them because they just don't speak English. And so I think it would make me feel sad that they were suffering at home all day waiting because it was such a big deal for them to leave home and go out into this world where they don't speak the language. And then secondly, particularly if it was the children coming up, that's not really fair to them to be interpreting for mum. Often it was mum, about their healthcare, because that'd be concerning for the child if they're giving all the details, and then concerning for us if mum's protecting the child from, you know, certain really important information. So, you know, we used to sort of bluff our way through a little bit, but once I got aware of that interpreter service and using it, it was such an eye-opener, and it was so helpful because I learned a lot from the interpreters themselves about, you know, cultural stuff because they could speak my language, and it was just such a better service. And the things that I found out were going on for this patient that I had no idea about or could never have imagined, and you know, it was a great thing. So
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And Isabel, I know you've got some data about some discrimination from recent research as well that you'd found as well. What was that about?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a recent report from the Critical Care Medicine Journal, and it talks about reports of bullying, discrimination, and sexual harassment in ICU nurses in Australia and New Zealand. And it's recent, just from January. It was published online on the Australian Critical Care Journal in October last year, but it's still in press there. So what's interesting from this paper is that while they conducted a prospective cross-sectional study, it was an online survey of ICU nurses from, as I said, Australia and New Zealand. And they distributed the survey through the critical care colleges and also from social media. And they had quite a good response because they analyzed 629 survey responses. And in terms of discrimination, what they found is that 32.6% of the nurses felt discriminated. And I was telling you before, guys, it feels like shocking, but at the same time, not as shocking because we have experienced this in our own lives, right? But it's perhaps not shocking the words, probably, I don't know.
I think disappointing.
Yeah.
Shame. Yeah. I mean, how is this possible? Why are we doing this to ourselves, basically?
Yeah, and why are we not learning and changing? I don't know.
Yeah, so... And you know, the main things for discrimination were age, gender, ethnicity, and country of residence. Well, yeah, I like to get into, you know, and because this is just the abstract what I'm giving you, because we don't really have much time to go into detail, and also it's still in press. The paper is not like publicly available, but this part is, right? So that's why I'm sharing this. But the takeaway from this report is that determining the true extent of these behaviors is very challenging. However, it's a significant issue. So that's point one. Point two is that the main responsibles for this kind of behavior were nurses. And again, that's very disappointing. And these behaviors, at the third point, are not commonly reported. So that's another thing to consider. We keep quiet. We don't go and report it. We sort of, okay, this is it. We live with this, and we have to just deal and cope the best we can. And sometimes, those coping mechanisms are affecting our well-being, mental health, family relationships, etc., etc. And a third point to take away is that this problem needs to be recognized and owned, and strategies need to be developed and enacted to support this.
Yeah, so the old saying, you can't change what you're not aware of or what you don't acknowledge. And so if we're not acknowledging it, then we shouldn't be surprised that the statistic is so significant. Like that's more than a third of respondents.
Yeah. So if we're not willing to acknowledge that there is inequity in our systems, then how can we try to work towards equity? If we just are not willing to go, you know what, there is an imbalance here in the group because we have a lot of the dominant culture sitting here, I wonder what we can do differently. Does anybody have any suggestions? Where are we sitting on a cultural, on a continuum of cultural competency? Where are we sitting in this group so that everybody feels safe to talk up and to say, you know what, yesterday, someone dismissed me because I was, the female in the group, or yesterday I got talked down to because I come from another country and I'm not from Australia. So apparently I couldn't have an opinion. Do you know what I mean? And so potentially we're seeing people walk away from their jobs because they don't feel comfortable at work. They don't feel safe at work, and then they leave.
So which comes first? I think it's the safe environment to be able to speak, because otherwise, if you say that, you're just going to get dismissed or ridiculed or ignored.
Oh, you'll
there they go again, or whatever,
Yeah, you'll be the whistleblower. Always complaining. And you're like, no, I'm allowed to have a voice. Actually, I'm an educated person who's worked really hard in my career, and I'm allowed to have a voice. So, and I want to speak up.
So is it finding a trusted person that you can, in the team, that you can say, look, this is the experience. Is anyone else having this? Wonder what's going on. How do you think we could push this up the line? Perhaps that could be an in.
Yeah, and there should be also clear mechanisms for reporting. Perhaps that's not through your line manager, perhaps it's through HR, but clear processes and pathways to be able to report these issues, and also acknowledge and not being dismissed. Okay, you are all of this is in your head or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, recently I'm working in I'm working with an aged care facility at the moment, and I really like their initiatives. So they've got a really diverse work group. I'm like, wow, that's a diverse work group. And from all different countries of the world, lots of different places, lots of different. And so they created, so their whiteboard is a map of the world. And they put a map of the world on their whiteboard. And so they put, all the staff have all got a pin to identify where they're from, and just talk about something from their culture. So this is how they celebrate their diversity of coming from different places. And they also have a little bit about, how their family works in this country. So, they might say, I have 2 dogs and a cat. I have, I have a wife and 2 children, but I'm in a same-sex marriage. They openly put all of that up so that they can know each other. Yeah. And so I don't know, that worked well for this organization, and I can't say it's everything, but I thought it was interesting because I've never seen that before. And I was, and I just think, well, for whatever reason, they've got someone who's quite motivated to share that, and everyone comes and shares that. Yeah. But I think it's something we can all work on. And I like that thinking of, well, what could we do, from this podcast today? I mean, what can we do to start being aware of our conscious and unconscious bias? How can we be aware that, I have a conscious bias to always look for inequality. So I'm very aware of it. And so, because I've worked in so many places where I've seen it exampled to me very quickly, and I don't like it and I don't feel comfortable with it. And so I call it out pretty quickly. So but it's a conscious bias now where I'm almost looking for it sometimes where it doesn't exist. So I have to pull my head in sometimes and just calm down. Okay, so I've gone the reverse way, a little bit too hard. What else can we do to think about how we can help reduce, we'll just open our minds to discrimination in work and teams and know that it's there? What else can we do?
This is like a shared kind of responsibility, the organization on one hand, but also personal.
Yeah.
So in personal responsibility, what I would do is perhaps every time it happens, keep record, document it, and perhaps raise the issue with the person first,
Yeah.
And if that doesn't stop and continues, then, document it and perhaps go through the whatever pathway works in the organization, either, through your line manager, if that's the case, or put a, complaint in HR.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are, documenting these issues, I would probably find someone who you can reality check or, and make sure that this is actually happening.
Validate. Is it what I'm seeing, what you're seeing, or
Yes.
is my bias in my head, interpreting it the wrong way?
Yeah, so when you document it, if there are witnesses, document that as well. This person, and this person were present in this situation, and keep record, and so it's objective. So when you have to, or if you have to, I don't know, because hopefully the issue resolves, just with the conversation. So the person is aware that they're doing something that is not okay, and leave it there. But if the issues continue, then you have proof if you need to use it.
Yeah, good. No, that's a great suggestion as well. Definitely. And I think just investing in your cultural competence and just understanding where you're sitting. Just be curious with yourself and go, if because there is a thing called a continuum of cultural competency, and it moves us from cultural basically destructiveness, where we break down a culture of people and we destroy them, through to, cultural proficiency, where we're integrative, we accept everyone as who they are, and we work together to integrate culture. And it's just part of the norm is that everyone feels safe and equal. So, but the thing is about a continuum is that we're always flipping back and forth on it, and I think it's just that mindfulness of, well, where am I sitting? And, I've had episodes in my life where I've been culturally blind. Yeah, 100%, I have had a blindness because, and that could have been attached to an unconscious bias. It could have been attached to a previous, issue where, I can think of few triggers that I've had in my life and events that have happened in my life that have left me with some significant triggers towards people. And so, have I actually gone back and revisited that trauma in my life, and have I resolved that issue I had with that group that maybe, that person was from who had offended against me? So, that sort of thing. I've had some of those triggers, and I've had to go back and do some real hard work on that to sort of get over those barriers I had in my own bias as well. So, but, I think it's what I think Celeste was saying before is, being open to that. If I do have an incident where I am proving to be culturally blind, and that means that and by culturally blind, I mean, you walk around the world going, I treat everyone equally. I just treat everybody the same. That's a lovely notion.
But that's the problem, isn't it?
It's a lovely notion, but the fact is not everybody is equal, because everybody has had their struggles and their traumas and their histories and their stories. And so we have to hear those stories and those traumas and those things to really understand that person's perspective and point of view. Yeah. So, we have to stop and we have to listen. And I know that takes a lot of time, and sometimes that's what we don't have the time in healthcare sometimes to do that. And I do understand why these things happen. But yeah, it's just understand that cultural continuum. And we'll put up a slide which for when you're watching this back and at home and, you know, listening to us later, that'll have that cultural continuum on it, which might be interesting for you to see as well. So that might be good too. What else can we do? We can surround ourselves with some allies. So surround ourselves with some people who are from different cultures and perspectives and really understand how the world appears to them and how it feels to be them.
I think that's a great one, Sue. And I think Ruchika Tulshan has written a really good book about diversion, inclusion, and equity. And she really acknowledges how sometimes if we may live in a bubble, maybe we've lived our whole life surrounded by people who are just like us, and it's just the way that our life is, the path that we've followed, and we may not have had the opportunity to travel or see different cultures too much. And so it's really foreign and it's very uncomfortable to know how to interact, or perhaps, you know, just to be around people who speak, you know, differently to ourselves. So, you know, she makes that suggestion, try to make connections with people in, you know, just in the street or in your church or in your whatever, you know, different areas of your life where you can get that exposure, or even something as simple as reading some books that focus on different cultures, or movies that incorporate different cultures, so that you can start building a little bit of awareness and maybe conversation, that you become more comfortable to have conversations with people and own that. Like, you know, I've had a really sheltered life and I really haven't had much to do with people from XYZ country. You know, like, can you tell me a bit about what was it like in, you know, where you come from, like with your country, or what was your childhood like, or I don't know, just be curious.
Exactly. I love that. Be curious.
Yes.
And, you know,
when you stick your foot in it, don't beat yourself up and think, oh, that's the last time I'm going to try that. It's like, oops, and apologize. Say, look, I'm really sorry that if I offended you. I know that I'm pretty ignorant about this stuff, but I'm really keen to learn. So, you know, whatever you can share with me, and tell me if I ever put my foot in it, because that'll help me learn.
Exactly. That's awesome, Celeste. Thank you. Yeah. So no, I think that's, and if you see something is happening, like what Isabel was saying earlier, you know, speak up, look after each other. You know, if I see my colleagues getting a bit hassled because, you know, she's not being listened to or whatever, like, just ask her if she's okay and if she wants to do anything about it. Have her back, or his back. Sorry, I shouldn't be discriminating against the male of the profession. My apologies.
Well, there.
Yes. See how simple it is to do, everyone. Yes. So have you got anything else to add of what you might do, Isabel?
But, you know, from my experience, what I lived is not much of, I haven't been aware whether, you know, I've been discriminated against in Australia, particularly, you know, in Chile, I don't think so. Or perhaps I have and I didn't realize. That's the thing, I didn't realize, because, you know, for me, it's like I don't have that radar of, I don't know, as you were mentioning before, Sue, like, you know, you are hyper aware of this.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't, because I'm focused on perhaps other things. I don't know. So I don't have that. So I don't really know. You know, I just remember one uncomfortable incident. But to me, I didn't associate that as being discriminated. I just thought, oh, another mean girl. So, and you know, for me, it's not like, I have worked with a lot of male, because in the ambulances, that's like 50-50. And I can't say from my experience that I ever been discriminated or treated badly by male, it's always been from female. And that's my experience.
Yeah.
I don't have perhaps that thing like, oh, male, white, do such and such. Because for me personally, it's always been mean girls, independently of the color of the skin or whether they speak English or any other language. It's always been girls.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that goes back to that when we talked about, nurses eating their young and, that bullying in the workplace effectively, where, there is that issue in nursing and healthcare where, we can be very unpleasant to each other often. Yeah. And it's well documented and well researched, but it's not changing there either. So there is that component as well. So
for me, I'm not sure whether it's discrimination. It's just because that's the way women show aggression. Boys, they resolve it very quickly, here and there, and that's it. With us, it's more like behind the back and being mean, passive aggression, right? Yeah. So that's why I'm like, I'm not really sure whether it is discrimination because that's not in my radar and never thought of it. So it's more like, oh, that's just another mean girl.
And that's great because hopefully this podcast today just stimulates a few people to go, oh, I get it. I may not have been discriminated against, but I wonder if I've inadvertently discriminated against others, or am I seeing it happening in my team and I'm not doing anything about it? Am I adding to inequity or am I part of equity? Oh, I wonder. Yeah. So I think that's a really good point to sort of go, well, maybe we're just raising awareness today with this podcast.
And it'd be interesting to see if any listeners have got something else to add in the mix, or would you like to challenge and, let us know your ideas because, we're all learning and let's
keep having discussions.
Absolutely.
It's been great. It's been great in the podcast with you today. Hopefully this has raised some awareness, some thinking to go, I wonder what discrimination is happening in my workspace and I wonder if I could notice it a little bit more. If you'd like to share this, have a discussion at work about this, follow us, all of those things that you can do. We are on Facebook, we are on Spotify and we are on YouTube, and you can share this information with others and go, hey, maybe we should be talking about this at work. Please follow us and also message us. You can message us through Facebook, but you can also message us on YouTube as well and let us know what else you'd like to talk about. I mean, we've talked about discrimination today, but, do you want to talk about sexual harassment too? That's something we haven't broached. So let us know. Always loving to hear more from people out there. So thank you for today and enjoy your week. Bye.